agree.
No, she's
Oh,
technically,
I thought
as of
I
today,
thought she was coming to the last meeting.
she told me on Wednesday she was taking the job, and she
That's right.
basically
That's
is
right.
going to be at meetings
She was
Thursday.
sworn in as deputy.
She wasn't sworn in; she was appointed.
She told me at Scott dinner she was sworn in as deputy.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well, could
that's
be.
that, so she's starting that job.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, she started the job, but technically won't be sworn in.
she said her first. The hallway is naked. Told everybody to bring an art. So she's opening cookie changes, baby.
All right, as soon as Sharon sits down, we'll go. Okay, what do we got? Pledge of allegiance and roll call. Okay. You know, I haven't heard from her. Ann hasn't heard from her either.
Tony's usually here 20 minutes early, so
Yeah, no, I think it's very unusual.
but nobody emailed.
We're going to get this meeting started with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance. And could you have the record show that we do have a quorum? The absent commissioners are Commissioner Calusi, Commissioner McGinnis, and Commissioner Sharp. Commissioner Sharp may be in momentarily. Before we get into the meeting, I know there's a number of people here wanting to speak, and I think we've probably heard from most of you through emails, but I wanted to read something. This is a letter that the city received just recently from the Anti-Defamation League. Dear civil leader, as the December holidays approach, we at the Anti-Defamation League, one of the nation's premier organizations defending religious liberty, know that many civic officials face difficult questions about the placement of religious displays on public property. We are pleased to offer guidance on navigating these questions. Acknowledging the December holiday season is important in many communities. However, religious displays on public property can be deeply divisive, making members of religious minority groups feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. In addition, religious displays on courthouse steps, at City Hall, or in other seats of government can send a strong message to religious minorities that they do not belong or do not have an equal say in government. It's important to be sensitive to the needs and feelings of all members of our religiously diverse society. The body of law on this issue is complex and not always predictable. For example, from a legal perspective, a Christmas tree is not a religious symbol, but a creche or a nativity scene is. The underlying principle, though, is fairly simple. A local government must never, in whatever it does, appear to endorse or disapprove of one particular religion or religion in general. Of course, what endorsement or disapproval means in practice depends heavily on the context of the display. For example, a small creche in a large display that also includes snowflakes, reindeer, and other non-religious symbols does not convey the same message as a prominent creche standing alone or dominating a display. Ask yourself whether the average person would think from looking at the display that the government is communicating a message in favor or against religion. If the answer to that question is yes, the display is not allowed. I know a number of you are concerned about the holiday creche, which I guess up until a couple years ago was over on Rehoboth Avenue in front of the M&T Bank. But the holiday creche was put up without permission this year, and that's why it was taken down. Now, typically, we allow public comment at this time in our meeting on items that are on the agenda. This item is not on the agenda. However, you know, I know most, if not all of you, are going to basically say the same thing. So if a few of you would like to come up and take a couple of minutes to give your point of view, that's fine. These are public meetings. But I hope in your comments you take into consideration what I just read.
Mr. Mayor, can I just mention also that because this is not on the agenda, while I think it's appropriate that you all listen to comments of the public, I would caution you against engaging in any sort of discussion that would result in some sort of action being taken, because the other public members don't know that this is occurring today, and they're not here to hear it.
Thank you. Anybody? And please state your name and if you can be brief, please.
My name is Father William Coco. I'm pastor of St. Edmunds, located at 409 King Charles Avenue. A couple things. One, I don't know, the paper you read, is that an opinion? Does that mean that we have to follow it? Are we saying that because that is written on a piece of paper, we have to follow it? I don't know the answer to that. That's my question. Secondly, you mentioned the fact that the creche had been up by the M&T Bank. My understanding, I've only been here 4 years as pastor, but my understanding from the people I've spoken to, the creche used to be where we had put it the other day, or at least in that general area, for many, 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 many years. Now, that's according to people who lived here longer than I have. We had a discussion at the community dinner with you and with Ms. Lynn, and in that discussion, we were told, the thing is, we wanted to put it in a more prominent place as our church. That's St. Edmunds. Some people, I don't, say that I speak for all the community. I'm speaking for the people at St. Edmunds. And when we talked to you, you were both very nice to us. You both said it could be considered. Ms. Lynn said one of the caveats she did give us was that she thought if we do it, it's got to be everybody. She said that. And I don't have a problem with that. None of us have a problem with that. But it seemed in her opinion that meant that we, the individuals at St. Edmunds, had to put up something for everyone, which I don't know that that's appropriate. I don't suppose to know what any other group would one up. All I know is, as a Catholic and as a Christian, Christmas, the true meaning of Christmas is Jesus Christ. And we have Christmas lights in this town, lots of them, a Christmas tree, a Christmas wreaths, Christmas decorations, Christmas parade, and yet we're not allowed to talk, show Jesus Christ. To me, that doesn't make any sense. I have looked up some things.
Excuse me 1 second. Mm-hmm. That is not true.
What's not true?
That you're not allowed to show. You have plenty of property at St. Edmunds.
In a place that is viewable to all. In my parish, of course we do. Of course we do have that, right? And I'm not opposed to a menorah up there. I'm not opposed to anything else anyone wants. I'm not opposed to it. But at the same time, this action is saying that we can't have that as members of this community who would like it. We're not the only members of this community, absolutely. And if other people want to put other things up, again, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I don't think I should be responsible for putting it up. If the people of the other faith groups want something, then they should organize their people, come to the city, ask permission, and put it up. That's not a problem. But in looking at up some things, the Supreme Court in a decision said that a creche is not necessarily an endorsement of religion. It's a part of our history as an American society, and therefore just because it's up there doesn't say that this city is saying everyone has to be Christian or believe in Jesus. It's a part of, it's what Christmas came from, the birth of Jesus Christ. So even if you don't like the religious aspect of it, even if you don't believe in it, it's a historical event. It's a reality. It's like putting a statue of Columbus up on Columbus Day. It happened. He is a person. And as Christians, we believe it happened. We believe that Jesus Christ was born on Christmas. We believe that's why the celebration of Christmas came about. And therefore, we're simply asking that a representation of that be in a public place, not to the exclusion of anyone or anything. Anybody else wants to put up any other thing? I have no problem with it. I don't believe any of my parishioners do. But to exclude it based on, I'm sure we can find something from somebody who doesn't want it. I get that. But I don't think it's the mere presence of it is forcing anything on anyone. So that's what I'm, bringing up. We did not, if the city feels, if you, Mayor, or the city manager thinks that we forced ourselves, I apologize for that. And maybe there's some miscommunication on what we understood to be your approval, not approval of it, but okay of it. Again, we did this, we thought we did this the proper way. We came to you. You run the city. And we weren't trying to buffalo anyone. We weren't trying to push anything over on anyone. We came to you and asked you. So I would, hopefully you understand that. And whatever decision you're going to make. I understand that. But I think as citizens, and some of whom are represented here, and many more, I'm sure, if, as the city solicitor said, the meeting was known to be discussing this, there probably would be more people. So we'd ask that for your consideration. Again, Christmas, unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, as a priest, has become a holiday. But the reality of Christmas is 2,000 years ago, it was first a holy day, and we have lost that. It's gone. But hopefully we don't have to lose that, because hopefully we can make a reasonable decision that it can be in a public place. Again, with other things, fine. And whatever their interest of those other people are, I can't speak for them because I don't represent them. But if they want something else up, fine, no problem. So that's my.
Okay, thank you. And I know there are a lot of people here. You all have a point of view. If there's anything that Father Coco missed, please come to the forefront. If not, we'd like to move on with our meeting. And obviously, you're going to say something that he did not say. Okay.
Bill Drake, Rehoboth City, not Rehoboth Beach. A couple things. One, yes, we do respect the ACLU, but the ACLU is not the defining factor here. The Supreme Court is. And in the 1984 case, Lynn versus Donnelly, they did say that a creche was permissible. And I think what we should think about here too, the city of Rehoboth was founded as a Christian community. And I don't think we should forget about our history.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Marjorie Burns, the pastor at Faith United Methodist Church right here on Church Street. Yesterday I received a call from Patty, member of the Catholic Church, and was talking about Kwanzaa. So I'm here to clarify Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is celebrated December 26th through January 1st. Not all African American families or individuals celebrate Kwanzaa. I can say that probably 95% of us do celebrate Christmas. So whether there is something that, is public display of Kwanzaa or not, we would, in the African American community, would not be offended either way, whether it was there or not. So please understand that not all African Americans celebrate Kwanzaa. That is an individual thing, but as I said before, the majority of us do celebrate Christmas because we remember that without Christmas, we would not truly be able to celebrate a holy season. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Harvey, 6 Stafford Road, Rehoboth Beach. I'd just like to say that within sight of the Christmas tree, probably within 100 feet of it, is the Santa Claus house. Santa Claus, we know, is really a derivation of Saint Nicholas, and talking to the children about gifts and everything. I can't understand why the city wouldn't allow the greatest gift given to mankind displayed underneath the Christmas tree that we have in the city. Thank you.
Guess I'm the troublemaker. I just want to say, make it really clear, Patty Derrick. I guess most people know me. Just want to make it really clear that in 1873, the Charter of Delaware made Rehoboth known as the Camp Rehoboth Meeting Ground for the Methodist Church, official charter as the Christian Seaside Resort. That is in our state legislator law, and it's still there today. It wasn't until 1891 that we became a city, but in 1873 we were known as the Christian Seaside Resort, and that is where our history came from. We started as a camp meeting ground for a Christian church, and we still are, and we had 7 churches in our town. We're down to 4, but the other 3 still exist. They just moved out on the highway. And I just think it's important that people understand that. The other thing is, I've been here since '79, and most of the time until we built the new bandstand, the nativity scene was at right where the new building is at the bandstand, on a platform that was put up by the city, John Brown and Greg Goss, for years and years and years, and there was no question about it. It was there every year. And when I came here, before I came here, I know there's people that were born here that will tell you that that was been put up years and years before that. So it's not something that just happened. It's something that's been going on for a very, very long time. And I think the history is important for Rehoboth to know that these things matter. Christmas does matter. The nativity scene does matter to the people in Rehoboth.
Thank you, Patty.
If there's nothing else, we're just going to move on with our agenda. Thank you very much for you being here today, and appreciate the emails and appreciate your attendance at the meeting today.
Mayor, point of order, just for my clarification, just given the amount of public here, I don't even know if it's appropriate for the meeting because it's not on the agenda, but given the public comment, is there a next step to this, or can we even discuss that, or what is the process to address the community?
I'll speak with the city manager on it
Okay.
after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted clear on the next steps.
All
Thank
right.
you.
We're going to move right into the agenda.
Is this going to be decided upon after Christmas?
So just so everybody's clear, that there are regulations that establish what the group of commissioners can do and how they can act on certain things. There's a 7-day notice period for any action that the commissioners want to take. So if they were to take this up, they'd have to post a meeting, a public notice of a meeting, 7 days notice, so all the members of the public can come see it and listen to it and hear it and give their input. So the soonest they could act is if they posted something to.
Not infringing on Christian rights. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you. We're going to move on with our agenda. Okay, we're going to move right into the purpose of the special workshop is A. Why don't we take a second while people go? Thank you.
By reading the letter. Yes. Thank you. That's not on the. It's not on the agenda, so we don't need to.
Black eye for the city.
This is something that just came up. It's not like it's.
No.
So, I didn't receive any emails. I don't know most of these people. Other than the ones that came, there were a couple, I guess.
Tell you what, they
The
did
mayor,
organize
city
their people
manager, received
quickly.
the menu.
Thank you, Glenn. They organized their people quickly. It's all in Since like yesterday, 24 hours. Yes, Walter.
Morning, Walter Birmingham, 123 Hennepin Avenue. This is an unusual situation that just happened, and I would suggest maybe for the future, if it does happen, that you at least maybe exceptionally modify the agenda so make it somewhat of comment, because otherwise we don't need this happening all the time. I can understand their frustration. Thank you.
And just for everybody's information, this just started yesterday.
Mayor,
Okay.
Mayor, before you start, I apologize for being late. I just had not felt well this morning,
Oh,
so.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And Ann, if you could officially notice that Commissioner Sharp is here. Good to have you. We're going to move right into A, which is discussion of a new replacement commissioner, a new secretary of the Board of Commissioners, a new liaison to Main Street, and a new chair, Bandstand and Convention Center, Special Events Committee Chair. Just so everybody knows, and I think all the commissioners got it, Commissioner McGinnis, the new state elected auditor of accounts, actually took an assistant auditor position as of Wednesday. And she had passed along her resignation as a commissioner here in the city of Rehoboth as of today. And so we have been speaking amongst the commissioners about a replacement for Commissioner McGinnis. And the plan would be to discuss the replacement today with the idea of voting as early as Monday at a special meeting at 8:30, special workshop voting meeting at 8:30 to approve the appointments and the nomination with the idea that that commissioner, if approved by the commissioners, would be sworn in at our regular meeting on the 21st. After speaking with the commissioners as well as speaking with a number of people in the community, I have decided to nominate for the replacement of the vacant commissioner seat, Mr. Stephen Sheffer. Mr. Sheffer is been coming to Rehoboth for a number of years. He's been a full-time resident for just over 1.5 years. He and his wife live on Lake Avenue. I won't go into any more details than that, just in case. Mr. Sheffer is a member of the Bandstand Committee. Mr. Sheffer has helped out with the Community Unity Dinner and a number of different things in the city. A lot of community events. Been at commissioner meetings, as well as one of the most important things in my mind is Mr. Sheffer is willing to work as a commissioner with the commissioners in a fair and reasonable fashion. So with that, I'll open that up to discussion and see if there are any questions or comments about Mr. Sheffer as being replacement commissioner.
I just have one comment. After having spent some time with him, I did not know him before, but I just wanted to remark that I was particularly impressed by his discussion of wanting to be very balanced with all the constituents that we have here in Rehoboth and all of the different driving interests. So I thought that was a particular value that I'm quite certain all of us hold.
Thank you.
I've had, Mayor, thank you for making this nomination as well. I think Mr. Sheffer is somebody in the community that probably goes unnoticed, as Commissioner Sharp said. She hadn't had a chance to meet him, but his work has just been quiet, humble, and supportive of just so many facets of the community, from supporting the Unity Dinner to being a volunteer at Camp Rehoboth, to stepping up to some really difficult initiatives under the Bandstand Committee, and he's done it without stepping on toes and bringing everybody together. So I really applaud and support this member of the community joining the Board of Commissioners. So thank you.
Mayor, thank you for this. I've come to know Steve Sheffer over this last year and have been very impressed with his interest in community issues, community events, He has displayed in a variety of venues just a real genuine amount of interest and a lot of energy in furthering the quality of life and economic development in Rehoboth Beach. So he certainly has my support to become an interim commissioner.
Thank you.
Well, I've known Steve and his wife Daphne and his dog Yoda for a while, and mostly through dog walking encounters, and my dog likes his, so that's one plus. I have also sat with Steve, and I do believe he will do a good job up here. And I'd like, before we conclude this, for him to stand up so we can aim the camera at him so that those watching can see who he is. And you got a camera on him? Smile one more time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Stephen Scheffer. His last name is spelled Scheffer. And if, Mr. Scheffer, would you like to say anything? Or you don't have to. You'll have plenty of chance when you get here.
Well, I would just like to thank you all for considering me and just let you know this is quite a humbling part of my life. And I've always been in support roles throughout my career and have enjoyed helping the people whose faces are in the spotlight be successful. So this is, and I know this is an unusual situation where a commissioner is being replaced midterm, but I recognize, and I'm very sensitive to the fact that if voted on positively, I'll be in a kind of a unique position, having not been voted to be on the Board of Commissioners. But I promise, if given the opportunity, to work as hard as I can to earn the trust of the many constituencies within Rehoboth Beach and be a great representative for them. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Stephen.
I also want to be mindful that he would fill for the residue of the term, which is about 1 year and 9 months, I believe.
Yeah, August of 2020 would be the term. Okay, well, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. And thank you all for your comments. And we'll move that to the vote on Monday. The next.
Mayor, before you
oh,
move.
Sure.
So after the vote, will there be a swearing in?
The swearing in will be on the 21st.
On the 21st,
You know,
okay.
the regular
Thank you.
meeting, yeah. The next, again, Commissioner McGinnis, former Commissioner McGinnis had a number of different positions. She was the Secretary of the Board of Commissioners, as well as the Chair of the Bandstand Committee, as well as the liaison to Main Street. And so what I would like to do is get your discussion, approval towards the vote on Monday of a replacement for former Commissioner McGinnis as the Secretary of the Board of Commissioners would be Commissioner Schlosser. As the Chair of the Bandstand Committee would be, again, Commissioner Schlosser. And as liaison to Main Street would be Commissioner Coluzzi. I know Commissioner Coluzzi's not here. She obviously knows about these things. I've sent these out to you all. Open up for any kind of discussion or any kind of comments.
I would be fine with everybody.
I would support both names, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm certainly supportive. They're quality individuals, bring a lot of competencies.
Oh, sorry. I won't comment on my own nomination, but I will comment on, I think Commissioner Coluzzi is an outstanding choice to be the liaison to
great.
Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you. That should make it easy on Monday. And then next on B would be discussion of appointment of the chair and members of the Personnel Committee. And as my appointments, I would like to suggest that the chair of the Personnel Committee be Commissioner Sharp, and the members be Commissioner Byrne, Commissioner Coluzzi, and Commissioner Schlosser. Any discussion, comments?
I think, just from my perspective, I think Commissioner Sharp is an outstanding nominee for this position. She brings a lot of great experience in the human resources area, and something I think that will contribute a lot to the future of the city, which is all about human resources and our employees. That's what makes us. So I really applaud this nomination. I think it's the right person at the right time for this role. So from my perspective, I'm incredibly supportive of Commissioner Sharp's nomination.
Thank you.
And I'm supportive of the slate. I also want us to be mindful, I think we need to be mindful that the committee in the past has always had 3 members, and the mayor's putting a 4th member on there, which is allowed. This is something in the code or the charter, I believe, that says this committee shall consist of
Said
at least three elected officials. And so this fits the bill, right? Thank you.
Mayor, I'm certainly supportive of this slate, and I look forward to working with this team and being able to contribute to this important work. I also know that former Commissioner Gossett did a lot of work in this area, and I'm hopeful that we can continue to build on some of that as well, because he had a very keen interest and has shared some of his thoughts with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything?
I don't have anything other than thank you all for the support, and I'll try to do the very best that I can.
We know you will. Thank you.
And let me add, Mayor, because I'm looking at my colleague at the other end, I know that Commissioner Schlosser has chaired this group over the last year, and I don't want to negate any of the work that she did. I think that we've got a roadmap in front of us to continue to do good work that my former colleagues have been leading on this. So I look forward to that.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move into really the meat of the agenda. But before we do, and again, the meat of the agenda being further discuss the implementation of parking recommendations from the Parking Advisory Committee. And just to remind everybody, we've had a couple of meetings on the parking. We've had a lot of input, whether it's from letters to the editor or certain comments in the newspaper, whether from the Chamber of Commerce, from a number of the people downtown business, Main Street, as well as the commissioners, as well as the Parking Advisory Committee. And the Parking Advisory Committee put a number of different recommendations and suggestions on the table, and we've discussed those some. I put into your packet my suggested really compilation of what all of those things, all of those groups had put together. And what my intention here is today for discussion, but so that we can move forward and give the city manager a good idea of how we're going to approach the 2019 season, because a lot of the work that the parking department and the city staff has to do is really starting right now with the budget season so that we can be prepared for the Memorial Day weekend. With that in mind, a number of the things that I've put on the charts that we're going to discuss today, they are not in stone. We are not looking for so much of a vote today, but as much as a consensus to pass along our ideas and our thoughts on how to move forward to the city manager. With that in mind, I just wanted to point out something before we go into this, and it's really to point out that some comments have come up that, why are we doing this? Are we looking for more revenue? I want to say right up front, my idea of looking at the parking and the situation is not to necessarily create more revenue for the city. It's more to try to figure out a better way to manage the public and move people and move cars around the city so that the visitor experience as well as the residential experience, walkabout town, is more positive. And with that in mind, I went to a Southern Delaware tourism event yesterday, and Southern Delaware Tourism is a branch of the state, but it's basically Sussex County. And they put out some statistics just about every time they have a meeting. And so at this event, I got some statistics that I thought were pretty interesting. And this is a visitor's survey report of what visitors have said to Delaware Tourism through surveys about their visits and what they're looking for. And it's interesting, the top 10 visitor activities in Southern Delaware are: number 1, dining out, number 2, going to the beach, and number 3, tax-free shopping. Those are the top 3. If you think about it, that's Rehoboth Beach. I mean, each one of them, that's exactly what it is. And then the next one was, what visitors enjoy most about southern Delaware? Clean beaches and ocean is number one. Friendly atmosphere and people is number two. Small town charm, slower pace, number three. I don't know that we have a slower pace in the summer, but overall, we have a slower pace. So the top three reasons that people come to southern Delaware are basically for Rehoboth. So that's why I think it's very important for us to focus on the experience of the visitors, as well as the residents. And then what's interesting is they also had a question of what could be done better. Number one, more parking. That's a surprise, right? Number two, better moving of traffic. And number three, more public transportation options. So that's kind of a preface for going into this discussion about parking. It is, as everyone knows, very important to our community and very, I think, important to the progress of our community as we move forward. A lot of the things that are in these suggestions are things that haven't been changed in a number of years, and some of them are new, because I think it is time for us to look at it from the perspective of making some changes in the parking. And I don't think anything in these suggestions are drastic changes. They're just changes to maybe, again, try to move people around and create a better experience for all. So, if you wouldn't mind looking into I sent in the package, I sent two versions. One says the proposed parking changes, and the other is the abbreviated. The abbreviated one is just an easy one to kind of use as a place to read. But on the proposed parking changes, I think has a little bit more narrative, if you will. And so what I'd like to do is kind of, and again, we're going to discuss it much like we have in the previous meetings. It's really three areas: meters, permits, and then other. And there are a number of things from a meters and permits perspective that are similar, that are easy to kind of do together. For example, daily hours or season, something like that. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is just start that, my first suggestion, based on a number of comments, again, would be to set the season for both the meters as well as the permits to May 15th through and including September 30th. And what that does is it adds approximately a week on each end of the parking season. And it does pretty much so match or come closer to matching most of the local municipalities around here, whether it be Lewis, whether it be Dewey Beach, whether it be Bethany Beach. So that's one I think that we've had a lot of comments about, but my feeling is our shoulder seasons are spreading much further than the end of September, and they're starting before May 15th. But I think this is, again, a situation that we do have a lot of people coming into towns in the off-season, and especially as we start the season. And a lot of people start their summer season in May and run it all the way into October. So I'll open that specific subject to discussion, if anybody's got any comments.
I think it's fine. That's what we heard from the public, so it seems reasonable.
I feel quite similar. Each time I talk to folks about this, when I talk about the extension of the time frame, I basically get a shrug. Oh, okay. So I haven't heard any real pushback on why it would not be a good idea.
Okay, great.
Well, the pushback I hear is generally from the locals that live outside the city. But I think there was more pushback when it was proposed to start May 15th, or I'm sorry, May 1st, which would have added about 3.5 weeks to the system in the front. And so I'm comfortable as long as our meter system mirrors our permit system.
And again, yeah, let me just reiterate that. It would be suggested that they mirror. Whereas right now, if you remember, the permit starts Memorial Day Friday, I believe, and ends Labor Day Monday. And so for the permit season, it would be another week on one end, depending on the week, another week on one end in May, as well as 3 to 4 weeks on the other end. But again, seeing that our traffic, and especially in the permitted areas, our traffic during the month of September is as much as it is really in June, because many people take the opportunity to have September as a vacation month, and they do go to the beach and they do park in the neighborhoods. Okay.
Do you want input from the committee on each item or at the end, or how do you want?
It would probably be best, I think, at the end, if you wouldn't mind. Is that more?
Except if you don't mind when it gets to permits, because I think there's a couple things that I'd like you to consider before you.
Okay, yeah. Yep. So it seems to be a consensus of the season being May 15th through September 30th for both setups. That's great. Now, the next is daily hours, and I don't see that, based on our discussions and based on the input that we've had, as being able to put that into the same situation so that it would be mirrored from meters to the permit areas. My suggestion here, based on the input, would be to move the daily hours in the metered areas from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. rather than what we have right now would be 10 a.m. to 12 midnight. And then in the permit areas to keep the times as they are, so continue the same hours as present from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, I think we heard from both sides. I think a lot of the businesses, a lot of the employees downtown tend to park in the permitted areas in the evening. So we heard that it's, if they've got meters downtown at night, it makes it a little bit difficult for either the visitor experience or the employee experience, business owner experience. But then on the other side, we have heard from the residents that on the Friday, Saturday nights, or nighttime, there are a lot of businesses or patrons of businesses or employees parking in front of people's houses in the permitted area. My feeling is, based upon the input, I couldn't really figure, and I'm open here, but I couldn't really figure out how to differentiate the two other than what we have. A lot of it has to do with staff as well, because right now we have people that ride their bicycles or walk through the neighborhoods and monitor or police the permits. But at nighttime, it becomes a lot different. Whereas downtown around the meters, our people are walking and they're using their little handheld machines, and it's lit up a little bit better, so it's a little bit different situation. So I'll open that up for any comments.
Just Mayor, I really actually support 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's what I heard during public comment, that the feedback that I got from folks individually and talking to the businesses, that those are the hours that I heard supported from a majority of our stakeholders. So I would actually prefer a 9 p.m. End time, based on what feedback I've gotten.
Yeah, that was actually what I had originally thought of. Well, I mean, it'd come in from maybe 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Or 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. And, on one end, on the early part of time, a lot of pushback from the standpoint of people liking to come downtown and walk on the boardwalk in the morning, have a cup of coffee before 10 o'clock, gave the business owners the opportunity to get their shops up and running by opening time at 10 or 11. So that 9 a.m. kind of dropped by the wayside. And I heard probably half and half.
Oh, I'm sorry,
9
just to
PM.
clarify, I'm support of 10 a.m.
No,
It's just-
but I'm,
oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
so
Thank
10
you.
a.m. is pretty easy, I
Thank
think.
you.
But I heard probably half and half, the 10 p.m. versus 9 p.m. You know, some people saying, hey, you know, we're going to lose that revenue that we're getting right now from 9 to 12, which I think has been diminished over the last few years. And I also got the opportunity to hear from some people that a change from midnight to 10 p.m. was good, a good way to try it, to start it this year. So it kind of went 50-50. More of the people I spoke to actually favored the 10 p.m., but I think they would also favor the 9 just because they pay less.
I'm just looking back at when we were at the spreadsheet stage.
Yep.
And I have to say, mine had been entered incorrectly. And I had to mention at that meeting that it was, my recommendation should have come in for this document, it was a typo, as 9 p.m. So I thought when we left that meeting, we had a consensus on 9 p.m. Just as background.
And that's not my memory.
Okay.
That we even came to a consensus. You know, I definitely support leaving the start time at 10 a.m. alone. I've voiced that before. You know, we did get some people, such as Melissa over on Delaware Avenue, that wanted to leave it at midnight for reasons that she stated. I'm frankly, I'm receptive to leaving it to midnight. However, I also recognize that farther out from the downtown core area, there's fewer and fewer people after 10, 11 o'clock at night. So I'm fine with going to 10 p.m. And I'm really stuck on the 10 p.m. Because I think it's the right thing, but also this philosophy of keep it simple. It's easy, 10 to 10, 10 to 10, 10 to 10. So that's where I would go with this. My response for the 10 to 5 on the residential permit, I need to give you a little preface first to get to that. As I've said before, I believe the priority parking for the commercial area should be business patrons in the commercial area, not employees. Some beachgoers, yes, because they're business patrons as well as beachgoers. That's hard to deal with. But again, focusing on patronage, parking in the commercial area. In the residential area, I think the priority parking ought to be for property owners, for residents, renters, and also overflow parking for business patrons, not for employees. I think we need to consider perhaps changing in the future, coming back to it and looking at the time frame for permits stopping at 5 or whenever. But I don't think we're there yet. I'd like to leave it alone. Instead, I'd like to take 6 months or a year, whatever it takes, to develop a satellite parking program where we utilize outlying areas to put our employees or to give them incentives to use the outer areas, creating a jitney system, whatever. Because I think that, what we're doing is we're displacing the city employees who now park on Rehoboth Avenue in the off-season. When the season comes in season, they're displaced to the first residential, second residential, third residential street over there. So when it gets to the point where we're talking about discounted and preferential treatment for employees, I'm not there yet. I want to take a year to say, I think the Chamber of Commerce might be one for the city to approach to help look into this and develop that program, approaching the school, for instance, or approaching any other area to do this. But if you look at it, we have 330-ish businesses in town. If they just have one car or two cars each and we get those off the main avenue, get them off some of our residential streets, that's significant, absolutely significant. So I'm comfortable with leaving it at 10 to 5 for the permit parking area now, but with this study and after this study, however it concludes, I think it's worth coming back to at that time. Thank you.
And Stan, just for I'm sorry,
No, you go,
just for clarity, Stan, on the meters, where did you land?
I was satisfied with leaving it at midnight, but I do think that there's merit to going to 10 to 10.
10.
Not 10 to 9, 10 to 10.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, were you, and I just, Pat Caluzzi's not here today, but she had mentioned she supports 9 PM as well, but nonetheless, Stan, which were you, did you skip down to employee parking? Is that what you were referring to?
I don't know where it is.
No,
Okay,
that's.
Is that what you were
We're just
talking
talking about the daily hours.
Yeah.
We're
So-
gonna-
Okay, so
we'll
we're
get
not to that
some of
yet,
it.
thank you.
So back
Okay.
to meters, the point here. I'm certainly supportive of the 10 to 5 for permits. I agree with Commissioner Mills that I think we ought to take a further look at that, and I think that it's worked quite well. In terms of the meters, I initially, back in our mid-October discussions, came out at 10 to 9 PM. Certainly the 10 AM, I heard that over and over from many, many people, and that makes good sense for all the reasons that have been cited. I could certainly continue to be supportive of the 9 PM. I think there's some advantages for the later night businesses, the restaurants and bars and so on, to be able to entice folks to come in easily and continue to support those businesses that are staying open later into the evening. I certainly wouldn't argue strongly against 10 PM, but I can easily go with the 9 PM.
How about if we, I think, again, as I mentioned before, since we haven't really changed kind of the structure of parking in Rehoboth for a number of years, taking into consideration what Commissioner Mills is saying about looking further into the permits as we go forward, keeping it the same this year, but, kind of doing some more research. Maybe the same thing with the time on the meters. Maybe we go keeping it simple from 10 to 10 this year with the idea that if we see the need to maybe go from 10 to 9, that's something we can probably take a look at for next year. I mean, is that something that would
I
work?
just want us to be mindful that there's a cost to making these changes. As far as I recall, every Dunkin' meter inside has the time slot put in there. So, it's not free to go one year change it from midnight to 10 PM and then the next year to go to 9 PM. I don't disagree with looking at it, but I think that needs to be part of the formula going forward, that there is a cost to all these things. Just the first one, changing the season, there's a great cost to that because count all the signs that say
Yep.
parking permit season in effect from X to X, so.
I certainly wouldn't want us to get into changing signage every 12 months. I mean, one, it's a terrible waste of resources and expenses, and it's also very confusing. I come back to what I remember Carol talking about and the feedback that she's received at the chamber, and one of the main points that she has made is keep it simple, keep it understandable, and so there is something, Stan, about the 10 to 10 that has just a nice.
Well, and remember, that's a forgiveness of 2 hours. I think that's pretty generous.
Yeah,
to start, so.
and that's kind of what
I
I'm
agree.
thinking is it's a good place to start with the idea that, whether it's next year we change it again or we look at it next year, we don't change it again, maybe we change it 2 years later, but I think it's a good start. I mean, a number of the different communities around here have different times at the end of the night. Some to promote downtown businesses, some because they're just not people downtown. I think in Rehoboth, cutting it from 12 midnight to 10 helps the downtown businesses, which is part of what we want to do, but we also want to take into consideration that those 3 hours, from between 9 and 12, provide decent amount of revenue to the city right now, and so maybe there's a balance here. We lose 2 out of the 3 hours of revenue, but we're giving back something to some of the local businesses to maybe generate a little bit more business later afternoon. So
I have one more comment on that, just because I kind of hear actually I think I heard kind of a consensus for 9. So I'll make one more pitch on that, and then I'll go with whatever the final consensus is. When I think about behavior and walking around town, and of course I always feel it's my obligation to eat at all the restaurants and talk to all the bartenders and everybody else to get their feedback. It's my obligation as a commissioner, of course. I'm joking, but what I see is kind of the behavior of people coming into town. It appears to me there's kind of like this early crowd that comes like 7 to 9, and then there's this crowd that comes, for a later dinner, from 9 to 10, 11, midnight, and stays in town and shop and eat and go to the the various bars. So it seems to split it at 10. You're kind of, at least from what I've seen, that particular flow of folks. So if you had it at 9, you'd have the 7 kind of to 9 crowd, and then kind of the 9 to 11 or midnight crowd. So, and you wouldn't have to split that up or whatnot. That's the behavior. That's just me and my observation, to make it a little simpler for folks and observing that behavior. So that's just why I'd support the 9 o'clock time frame. But Mayor, I'll go with whatever the group obviously wants to do at this point.
yeah, I think, the 10 to 10, again, makes it simple. And I think we should be able to get some feedback if that's something that needs to be addressed as we move forward.
Okay.
So maybe we just move forward with that 10 to 10? All right, that makes that simple. Now, on the rate side, this is where we kind of differentiate between meters versus permits. A lot of different things were suggested by the parking committee to have, kind of different prices in different places, for example, downtown. So what I proposed was going to $3 an hour on all spots on Rehoboth Avenue west to 5th Street, and that would be 5th Street State Road. The 2 blocks of both Baltimore and Wilmington, and the block of 1st Street between Baltimore and Wilmington, with the exception of 30-minute meters on all these streets. And then, so that those meters would be going from $2 to $3 an hour. And hopefully, what that would do is cause some people to look at, again, with wayfinding and making sure that we have the right signage, making people say, okay, I can park at $3 an hour if I want to be in front of the place I want to go. I can park at $2 an hour 2 blocks over, and make a decision based on that.
So, Mayor, I'm glad you mentioned wayfinding in line 26 here. So, just as a backdrop for this discussion, can you talk a little bit about when that signage you expect to be available?
Well, I'm hoping, I think we've got on the agenda as early as the January workshop to have the merge people come in and talk further about the wayfinding proposal and about how it affects Rehoboth itself, and talk about the scope of work for that. Initially, when they started their work out on Route 1, it's to kind of tie in southern Delaware, if you will, each of the municipalities with Route 1. Nice looking signs, get some of those gaudy signs off there. And so when we spoke to them about a proposal for Rehoboth, was to not only connect it with downstate, but also do a wayfinding situation in Rehoboth to give us the opportunity to take down some of these signs that just don't match and get nicer looking signs up, but signs that point you in the right direction for where you want to go, whether it's parking, whether it's 30-minute meters, whether it's handicapped, whether it's beach parking, whether it's downtown businesses, museums, parks, whatever. And so my hope is that they come in January, and at that point in time, the commissioners discuss it and maybe give the city manager the opportunity to try to find some contingency funds to start the process prior to April 1st. because April 1st is when we get our budget. April 1st will probably be too late for them to get going. They've said to us, as far as the signs, it'll probably take 6 to 8 weeks. So if we give them the okay on April 1st, give them a check, it's going to be difficult for the summer. But if we can say to them sometime in January or early February, yes, go ahead, start the process, start putting things together, we may be able to get that stuff up by May 1st. And that's, the thought is to find some money so that we can start that proposal.
And I think that's a really important piece, because the way I'm thinking about this is without the wayfinding and without the signage for this season or even mid-season, you really stand less of a chance for success.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Okay,
I
so
mean, I think any of these changes that we're making, and it's not just with parking, but with anything about what we do downtown, I think the wayfinding thing kind of leads the way. I mean, it's very important. We can't do one without the other.
Okay, so it would be fair to characterize it that the expectation would be that in the spirit of better movement around Rehoboth, that the signage would be up before the season begins.
That's,
Okay.
my hope is aim for May 1st.
Okay, I just wanted to put a really fine point on having the ability to find those funds is critical.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is very, very critical. We can tinker with all of these parking regulations all we want, and if folks come in around the circle and they don't know where to go to do what it is they're intending to do in a way that supports the parking regulations that we come up with, then it's for naught. And the whole point is to help people get efficiently and easily, without driving back and forth on Rehoboth Avenue and our other business streets, if they're trying to get to the beach, to direct them in those ways and get them off of the main street, so that those that are coming in to shop can easily get into the business area and hopefully find efficient parking quickly.
I mean, my hope with the wayfinding is that as people cross the canal bridge and hit the circle, they have choices, whether it's go left down to the beach, right down to the beach, straight to the businesses, so on and so forth.
It's critical.
And then each successive block that points them further ways.
Mayor, one quick question on the wayfinding, and totally in support and agree with everything Commissioner Sharp and Burns said on the issue as well. I'm just thinking back to the presentation we had. As part of the wayfinding contract or procurement or whatever, is somebody going to help us determine kind of what the optimal placement and type of sign and size? Is that part of the contract? Just remind me.
Part of that
Okay.
proposal. Yep.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
They won't make the signs.
Okay.
They're just,
They'll design where they should be and what they should look like. Okay. Great.
and then
Thank
we
you.
have input on colors and
Okay.
wavy things, stuff like
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
And my word on wayfinding signs is ditto.
And I think that's a
That's
very
it?
important thing for all that stuff.
That's great.
So now, back to, again, just meters on the rates. And let me go over that again. $3 an hour from $2 an hour, all spots on Rehoboth Avenue west to 5th Street, 2 blocks of Baltimore and Wilmington, and First Street between Baltimore and Wilmington. So it's really the majority of our business district area, commercial area, would move to $3, with the exception, again, of the 30-minute meters. And, you know, again, as I mentioned before, it's a way that is suggested by the parking committee to maybe move people so that the beachgoers will move to the $2 meters or out to the permitted areas versus the $3 meters being people that want to shop. And along with that, on all of those areas where it'd be $3 an hour, $3 an hour, those meters would be 3-hour minimums, maximums. Right now on Rehoboth Avenue and some places on Baltimore and Maryland, the meters are either 3 hours, or if you look on the business side of Rehoboth Avenue, where the shops are, they're 2 hours maximum. My suggestion would be to make all of those, where it is $3 an hour, 3-hour maximums. And then every other meter in the city would be $2 an hour and 12-hour maximums.
I certainly support that because of the consistency across the city as opposed to having just a mix of things from block to block to block, which we have some of now. And again, that I think comes back to what the chamber has said to us, that the people get confused. And this way it looks very consistent. We don't have lots of different types of meters. We have meters that are going to be, they're either going to be the $3 an hour for 3 hours or the 12-hour limit at $2 an hour.
I approach this in two ways, an A and a B. The A is $3, the change to $3 an hour in 90% of the business community. And then B is the 3-hour limits, including the fine. I'm going to address them backwards real quick. The 3-hour limits, I believe at the last meeting we heard from the business community primarily that my recollection is that 4 hours was optimum for establishing limits, because that's the time it takes to go in and have a dinner and come around, walk a little bit before you leave, especially because it's not just coming back to feed the meter according to the way you have it written here, it's actually having to move. And so I would suggest consideration of 3-hour limits. I'm not yet convinced on.
3-hour or 4?
4-hour limit, I'm sorry, thank you. Enforcing no feeding, it's interesting. I walked the streets, talked with some business owners, and some didn't care whether they stayed there 12 hours or not. They figured that they were one way or another going to go to the beach, but then they're going to come back and patronize for the rest of the day, these businesses. I'm not sold on that. I'm definitely not sold on putting a fine at $50. A $30 fine, you're going to get people that are really pissed off. But when you move it to 50, and you're going to have them really, really, really pissed off. And I don't think that behooves us or does us any good because of that old adage that you piss off one person and they tell 10 or 20 others who tell another 20 others. So I have mixed feelings on some of that. As far as the rates go, the rationale for the rates has been given as two things. One is to cause that turnover. And again, I have not heard enough from the business communities that has asked for to make sure people move along, that they're fine with it. So that's kind of out for me. But I'm not sure. I haven't heard enough that tells me the city should be in that business of enforcing these time limits. So again, I'm not sold on that. As far as the pricing to go, for me, we're putting the cart before the horse. I've always said that for me, to increase prices here or wherever, that first we need to identify our needs publicly. What do we need? We need to advertise those needs, and that makes it more palatable, I think, to the public to understand that we are trying to do something. For instance, I've written down here some notes, visitor-oriented projects that need funding, okay? Visitor-oriented. Well, parking infrastructure, that's why I wanted to go over, Mayor, the 5-year capital improvement program for parking. What exactly are the funds we need in the next 5 years? Do we need new meters? Do we need new or different reading equipment, et cetera? The change machines need maintenance. That costs money. So we need to fund all that. But how much do we need this year and each year for the next 5 years? And then, I'm being a little presumptuous. However, I'm looking at hopefully favorable response to some of the Beach and Boardwalk Committee requests for restroom upgrades, for addressing restroom sufficiency, which might mean enlarging restrooms or adding new facilities in the future, adding family restroom facilities. adding changing rooms, Rehoboth Beach Patrol building upgrades. The police want video cameras. We have yet to present that to the mayor and commissioners, but that would be a report that's coming up, that the police would like additional video cameras the length of the board. These are all substantially costly projects that at least our committee found very worthwhile and in need to give serious consideration to. Again, if we identify what all these costs are and have a plan, I'm much more receptive to seeking additional increase on the business area.
Just to address what you just mentioned, all of those things that you've mentioned are under consideration with the city manager for our budget process. So you will see a number of items that are going into the CIP as well as the budget as we move forward, whether they're parking things, some upgrades on the boardwalk and whatnot. So that is.
And that's fine, but what I want us to understand for me is I need to see those and have those in place.
Before you make this.
Before, otherwise I'm putting the cart before the horse. Thank you.
I have two comments, Mayor. Or, well, one question, clarification, and then two comments. One, maybe I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but would the 30-minute meters be under the same daily hours and rates, or what? Well, they wouldn't be the same rates, but how are the 30-minute meters handled? Would they also be 10 to 10? I'm just curious. It didn't specify that, so I just kind of want.
We're going to talk about 30-minute meters a little bit lower.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things I had suggested before, and I'm going to suggest, is we've got too many 30-minute meters.
Okay.
And so if we can, based on my suggestions, get to a minimum amount of 30-minute meters, then I would say those 30-minute meters would be at least 10 to 5, if not 10 to 10.
Okay.
Right now, you drive around Rehoboth Avenue on a Saturday night at 7 o'clock, and out in front of Grotto's or out in front of Louis will be 8 spaces empty, and they're all 30-minute meters.
Okay.
My suggestion, and again, working with the staff on this as we move forward into the spring, would be to take out 6 of those 8, period. And so that, yes, there would be 30-minute meters spread down Rehoboth Avenue and some of the other commercial streets, but not so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my suggestion. But again, that's something to work out with the staff. So that right now, I think we have about 65 plus 30-minute meters, and hopefully to try to get down to about 30. And so that it wouldn't be an issue for a 30-minute meter after 5 o'clock. That would be a good thing, because some of the businesses would like to have 30-minute meters till 10 o'clock. But 8 of them in one spot seems like a lot. But again, that's going to come down to technology.
Gotcha. And that's my second point. So I'm sorry I jumped ahead there. I was just trying to get the hours in my head as we're talking about the whole thing. I really like the idea of standardization across the board. That's awesome. That's what I heard from the parking crew is, boy, that would be helpful. So for us. Technology, real quick, to a point that Commissioner Mills brought up. I think the vision of the technology is you're not going to have the parking meter enforcers having to walk around and enforce this anymore. All they're going to do is get a beep on their phone when somebody's out of compliance. It's not I mean, that's ultimately where this is going to go. It's not going to be a big, intensive manual labor effort. Ultimately, I believe. And that being, so that's just a comment. And related to that, though, since we brought up the technology, I don't see on here the technology, a section on technology, but what I would really like to capture here is that we don't have to talk about it today, but I would like to see a briefing from the city manager as part of the budget discussions on what the short and long-term plan is to move to consistent technology. As part of this. I'd like it sooner rather than later, because I think it's important to this discussion, but certainly whenever the staff's ready to present it, I would like to see some sort of graphic and some sort of plan, short and long term, because I think it'll answer a lot of questions on enforcement. So is that possible?
Yeah, I think that's going to come during the budget season as we look into, because she's going to propose certain
Okay.
technology improvements, at least this year, and then looking at stuff over the next couple of years.
Okay, so it'll be a long-term, is that correct?
I'm prepared to give you just a brief
Could you?
explanation if
That'd
you'd
be
like
great.
me to.
Yeah, sure, great.
So you'll recall that the IPS meters were rented on a 3-year basis. We're finished with that leasing arrangement. The IPS meters these are single head meters that were approximately 452 of them that were placed on Baltimore, Wilmington, and First Street. And so that lease arrangement is out. We have quotes that I'll be bringing up at the budget meeting for the T2 system. We've looked at several, the parking department folks and I have looked at several and came down with what would best fit our needs. The T2 system, you'll recall, the chair of the parking committee, Ms. Kaufman, having, being familiar with the T2 system in her prior life, and of course, bringing that expertise here. So in essence, what I would be bringing forward in January at the first budget meeting would be a cost of approximately $400,000, which is would cover the IPS meters that were removed. This is approximately 46 multi-space pay stations to replace the IPS meters that were in. I heard what several commissioners talked about in the past year, in that they want the flexibility to be able to go to each pay station. They want patrons to have the flexibility to go to each pay station and be able to pay at each pay station, not dependent on exactly where they are. So, and also be able to receive permits at these pay stations, which will be the case with this new system. It's an investment in the future. It will eventually, my intention would be that it will eventually replace the parking meters throughout the city. So we have one specific system, which is another issue. I think Commissioner Schlosser, you had mentioned that we have too many. I think we had 4. So now we would be decreasing that number as much as possible. But, so that's
Be like from 4 to 2, right, this year, and then hopefully to 1.
well, we still have the Duncans.
Okay.
So the original Duncan meters that, I like to say we have 1,500 metered spaces approximately. So 500 will be this new T2 system. 97 of them are on Rehoboth Avenue with the parking on pay stations that we implemented in 2015 and 2016. You'll recall that we did that in 2 phases, and we added credit card usability in 2016. So this system is not just for the multi-space pay stations, but it's also incorporating the new license plate recognition, the LPR software, as really I'll call it a pilot project for the side streets before we even get to Rehoboth Avenue. And but there's an investment in this. So I'll be coming to you, with the intention of implementing this system in May. The caveat there is that I need to notify these folks by the end of January, at least to give them a commitment. So the decision will have to be made, within time to have this implemented by May 1st. May 15th certainly is the latest. So there's training that goes along with this and everything else.
Okay. Just real quick, can there's 1,500 metered spaces. Can you just really quick tell me the breakdown again of what it'll be, like if we approve this going forward, the breakout of how many meters there will, what technology will be used to support those 1,500 metered spacers?
Going forward.
Yeah, going forward.
So the,
I think this is awesome. That's
so
why I
the
just want
next
to be able to,
phase,
yeah.
the next
highlight it.
year?
Yeah.
2020 would be the following year. We've talked to the T2 folks, and their recommendation, based on the remaining one-third there, is another investment of $700,000 to outfit the remainder of the city.
I'm sorry, so we'll have
So
three
46
technologies?
this year.
Okay, gotcha. That's where I'm going.
Next,
Yeah.
next year.
Okay.
And then an additional 115. And these again are multi-space pay stations. So the 115 represents approximately 500 of those spaces.
I see. So then, and so that would be all would be running in the city in terms
Well,
of the technology?
please keep in mind that the Parkions, 97 of them, and I think we
Oh,
have
gotcha.
2 additional ones in the East Park parking lot. You know, they're 2015, 2016. We're not apt to replace them soon. I mean, the life expectancy is maybe 8 to 10 years, so we still have some time on that.
So it would just be down to T2 and the Parkion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sounds like a very good plan.
does.
I'm
Really
really
good plan.
pleased to hear it.
Yeah.
It sounds like
That
a good plan, but
application
I
of
think it also
technology and the
goes to what
consistency.
Commissioner Mills said about there are needs going forward, pretty substantial. And we will see during the budget season, as well as from a CIP perspective as we go forward. I'm sorry, Dick, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
that's fine. I just want to say that I'm supportive of this direction. I just think it makes so much sense, and we've heard this from folks about the need for consistency. I think it'll make our neighborhoods look better too, to get a lot of those old meters out and replace it with the pay stations.
Well, that's just a little preview of what you'll see in January, but again, my plan would be to bring everything forward at that point, but there needs to be a decision, at least so I can get back to them, not necessarily distribute a purchase order in January. They can wait until April, but they do need the commitment to get these up and running for us.
All right, so if we can bring it back into where we were. We were $3 an hour on Rehoboth Avenue with 3 hours for all of those blocks. And then $2 an hour for all the meters in the rest of the city with 12-hour limits, with the exception of those 30-minute meters that we'll discuss in a minute. Commissioner Mills, I have heard also, I was at a function last night with a lot of business people in town, and a number of people did mention 4 hours versus 3 hours. I've had very few people, although a couple mention $3 versus $2. We may be driving people out, but I think the intention, as I've mentioned before, is to move people, and it's like stadium parking, as the parking committee has mentioned, that if you want to, park up front right next to the place where you want to go, it's going to cost you a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit more convenient. And hopefully this will push people around. And again, if there's wayfinding starting at the circle, people won't be driving in circles on Rehoboth Avenue. They'll be going over to Delaware, or they'll go over to Virginia or something to park, because they know they can get on the boardwalk and walk 2 or 3 blocks and get to their place. So with that, what are people's thoughts on $3 an hour on those avenues, 3-hour minutes maximum? And I agree with you. I threw in that $50. I have no problem whatsoever taking that out and just leaving it as the same.
Yes, I support that. I'm
yeah.
sorry, that was my other point,
Yeah,
but I lost track.
you know,
of
I
it.
would support
Yeah.
leaving it.
Yeah.
But, and enforcing the 3-hour limit is a bit difficult, but I think, again, with signage, that will help. And again, if we point people in certain directions, that will help. But if the sign says we enforce it, maybe that scares people too.
So, Mayor, in line 16, where it clearly states strictly enforced,
Yes.
can you talk about how is that really going to go down.
Well, I don't want to talk about that in public.
Okay, that'll be a secret.
Speaking with the staff, and please don't print this, Chris. Speaking with the staff, it's a pretty difficult thing. It's a pretty difficult thing unless we have somebody walk around in chalk.
Okay.
What we're hoping to do is with signage, maybe people will commit to doing the right thing as much as possible.
I'm sorry, why is I'm just missing something. Why is our technology not enforcing this, the hour limit? I'm
There is
just
the
confused.
capability of doing that.
That's what I thought.
And it's just an extra step that is a little more time consuming than a piece of chalk taken to a tire. But the capability is there.
Okay, so is it something we'll be looking at?
It's just more education.
Okay,
that's all.
gotcha.
Yes.
So it's something on our radar, it's just gonna take a
Correct.
little longer to implement?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, I mean,
thank you,
It's not
thank you.
something today. I mean, I think a couple of these things, I mean, I look at this coming season, if we make these changes, is kind of a grace period and see how it goes. And then from there, if people continue to do the wrong things, you know, maybe there's more strict enforcement. Maybe there's
Okay.
ramp up that stuff. But again, I heard minimal about $2 to $3, but I did hear a few people say 3 hours versus 4 hours. So again, we should be able to give the city manager something if there's any thoughts today, one versus the other, or
I completely support the concept of the closer you are to the attraction, the more you will contribute from a parking standpoint. And $2 and $3, in my view, are reasonable.
anybody else, any input?
I support this. I don't support raising the fine to 50. So I definitely support staying status quo, but I support everything else that you've proposed here, Mayor.
I think it's more than reasonable. I said in October that I wonder out loud, without having any data, whether the $3 will make a difference in people's behavior. But I think we have to try it and hope that it will help
Yeah, I mean,
move us in the right direction. Because I think it'd be dramatic to go to $4 an hour. On the other hand, I think it would change people's behavior maybe more than the 2 to 3.
so, all right, okay. If that will move forward, again, $2 an hour on the other meters, and again, what we would do is have 3-hour meters and 12-hour meters, and that would be it, nothing else. And again, we have signage for that stuff. The 30-minute meters, we talked a little bit about it. As I said, and most of these are along Rehoboth Avenue, and they're in clumps because of technology. And, my thought is, I think we can work around the technology issue to limit the number of 30-minute meters, so that, working with the staff, we can place them at strategic places along Rehoboth Avenue, along, I think, 2nd Street or Baltimore, so that we can cut down on the number of 30-minute meters, because right now, very few of them are ever used.
Mayor, could you just address, I'm highly sensitive to this, relevant to Rouseabout and Nicola's.
Yep.
Could you talk a little bit about the impact?
I think going from 6 or 8 30-minute meters to 2 would have negligible impact. I think what happens now, in talking a little bit with the staff, some people take their chances in 30-minute meters. But, again, going up and down Rehoboth Avenue, there are a number of 30-minute meters that are left empty all the time. And, in the morning for Rouseabout, people running in and out, there would be at least 2. But in the morning, it's not that crowded. So there are other spaces available too. I think it's just too many empty spaces that could be utilized for long-term parking.
Well, what I see is particularly after our smaller shops close at 6 or 7, there's not a need for the 30-minute. And if there's a way for technology then to kick those into, you know, the
Yeah,
three,
and that's
the
something
3 hour
too.
or the
It's-
12-hour, whatever.
Yeah, it's just right now, there are 6 or 8 together because of our limitations on technology. But, you know, speaking with the staff, I think we could work it out that we could have 2 or 4 and get around the technology issue. Because right now we have 8 because it's on a Parkion and each number, you can't have different prices for each number. You know, that Parkion has one price. And again, new technology may be able to push us that direction. But again, there's many parking spaces that I've heard from people many times they're driving around. It's like, why do you have so many 30-minute meters? I come down here on Saturday night and I can't park. I mean, it's the same thing for a variety of different parking issues, but, you know, I just think there are too many, and I think this is a good way to cull them back to maybe 30, which is half, and then from that perspective, work with the businesses if there are people that would like another one close by, you know, work on a policy that we can have a hardcore policy for working that in. Any thoughts?
I'm not sure one size fits all, you know, what happens up there is not necessarily down there in the first
That's why
block,
I'd have
et
them all
cetera.
around.
So I'm more amenable to the city manager, I guess, working with some of the businesses to
Yep.
figure it out. There's a way around this anyhow. If you can only have two 30-minute meters together, fine, then you skip a space, and then you put 2 more 30-minute meters. So I understand your intent, though, which I think is laudable. And, but again, I think there needs to be some flexibility there based on location and which businesses are being served by it.
I don't feel I have the data right now, other than this discussion. I mean, and I talked to a couple business owners who like the 30-minute in front of theirs, but what I would really like, Mayor, before we actually vote on this is to ask the city manager and her team to go talk to the businesses, you know, that are impacted by this and come back with some data for us with specific information as to what their thoughts are. I just feel like I don't have data to just go forward with this right now. So I'd really love to hear that from the city manager and her team after input from the affected businesses, as Commissioner Mills, I think, also said.
Yeah, and I would suggest to each and every one of the commissioners to walk up and down Rehoboth Avenue and to see where they are now, because the way they're placed right now is, in my personal opinion, not as an official opinion, absurd. There are 8, I believe, right in front of Grotto. And Grotto, yes, does 30-minute because people picking up pizzas going back and forth. There are, I think, 6 or 10 in front of Louis. I think there's 6 in front of Browseabout. That right there is a third of what exists in the whole city. And so, you know, my feeling is, yes, we need 30-minute meters. And, you know, if we can strategically place them working with the staff and the city manager so that there are 2, 2, 2 every block, 2, 2, 2, so that we can get to 30 or 40, and they're more appealing to all the businesses, and maybe closer to the quick businesses, and we can work that out. I think that makes sense. I think having 6 or 8 in front of one business just doesn't make sense. I've never seen that in any municipality, you know, whether it's a small one like ourselves or even a big one. Yes, you do see, once in a while, you see 4, 5, or 7 handicap spaces around, and that's, I can understand
Well,
that.
If you reduce them, then I think this might be a good case for enforcement against feeding. Because if you're going to limit the number, then people ought to be in and out, not
Yep,
ability.
and I think that's something with technology.
Well, and this is the one that obviously for the ones we're talking about and the post office, this is the piece that gives me the most heartburn, but I absolutely trust that the city manager will be looking at this.
Okay.
And she knows all the players. And what gives me the heartburn is going from what they're used to and the community's used to right now down to the 2. But if there's flexibility in that of exactly where they are, maybe it would be a lot more palatable than I'm thinking at the moment.
Aren't some of these 30-minute meters summertime only and some are year-round? I believe that's true.
Some have little signs. I think certain people said, yeah, enforced all year round. I think over time, those little signs were put on. I don't know that it's on the, it's just on the post.
It's like in front of Browseabout, they've got double-sided signs, and it's either 30-minute parking or nothing or something like that. So
Yeah, no, and that's a
maybe
way
that
to.
needs to be evaluated too.
I think so too, and I think it's a great way to get the staff involved in that. All right, we're just gonna move forward.
But just to close that one out, before we vote on that, the city manager and team will come forward with a recommendation to us as to how and where the 30-minute meters should be placed. Is that the next step on
Yeah,
this?
I
A
mean,
map
I
of it?
don't see us necessarily voting on it, but I do see the
Okay.
city manager and the staff putting something in front of us
Okay.
before the opening of the season.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that pretty much takes care of the meters, unless there's any further, and we'll jump right into the permits.
Mayor, I do have a question, and
Sure.
it's not, it's only somewhat related to this, but it came up recently, and I indicated to several business owners that I would just raise the question because they expressed the concern. And a prime example is Sea Witch weekend. We had a number of people prior to the Sea Witch parade come in and park overnight. And the business owners are very concerned about that because those cars are put there so people have a space for the parade, but they have no intention to shop, to do anything other than to have a prime spot to observe
Yes.
the parade. And do we currently have any regulation about overnight parking?
No,
No.
we don't, but it's probably something, and given that specific circumstance, probably something worth us looking into. I think it's probably a fairly simple process to put in some kind of a regulation or policy that prior to some event like that, we can put things out, much like the parade, they put out
Right,
things, no
right.
parking because of this. Maybe you could put out cones or a policy of, no parking after 6 a.m. the morning of the parade or something like that, so people aren't parked from Thursday night for Saturday morning. And so if people park at 7 o'clock in the morning, that's fine. But if they park at 5 o'clock or 12 o'clock the night before,
Many businesses are really concerned in that kind of example because all of their parking spots up and down were filled with people that are not shopping. They've brought their cars in from wherever.
And I remember when I was on the board of the chamber, a number of the chamber members, board members said, geez, maybe the city should charge for those spaces. And they weren't talking $2. They were talking, because a number of them said, hey, to have prime
Right? Very prime.
parking, maybe you pay $50 or $100. But I don't know that that's where we're going. But I
And on
think,
such a busy weekend with so many people. who
I
wanna
think
get
there's a
in
way, I think
And not
there's a
only
way to
participate in the
address it.
activities, but also take advantage of the shopping and some of the sales that are going on, and they want to get in and out quick. And every spot is filled with.
Yeah, I think there's probably a way that we can work it out with the authorities.
Good, thank you.
I'm sorry, I want to just question really quick. What was your proposal for the convention center parking lot? Which scenario would that fall under? Is that like a $3 an hour?
that's the $2 an hour.
That's 2 and 12 hours. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did you finish post office on the first?
That I think is probably one also that kind of comes into the same discussion, and I think that's where Commissioner Sharp just came from. Same discussion with the staff and the city manager to work out with the post office, with the businesses, because the post office right now, I think, has 8 in front of the post office, various different times. Some are 24 hours, and then there's one across the street by the Sandcastle. But same thing.
Well, I guess I was addressing your time limits there. You posed a question, 24 hours or not, or limiting it 9 to 5.
Yeah, again, probably talking with the post office people, see how many they need and maybe the times. Because I don't think they need 8, although sometimes you see 6 of them filled. But, maybe the times, 9 to 5 would be a good thing. And again, that's something we can propose when we do a little bit more research. All right, we'll go right into the meters, the permits. As far as the rates go, it's interesting. I have on your sheet, the only one that I moved around because we did raise the rates, the daily rates last year. We did not raise the seasonal rates, but we raised the daily rates, and on both weekends and during the week. And the only one I've suggested is moving the weekly pass to $90. I think right now it's at $80, and it's just, it's a little bit too cheap, but I'm open on that. Commissioner Calusi did contact me, and she said that she was fine with everything, the suggestions that we've made across the board on the parking, with the exception of, she seemed to think that the permit rates should go up, the daily permit rates, and maybe even the annual, but that's the only thing she had to add there. I haven't moved any of those rates other than this weekly one because of what we did last year, but I'm open to suggestion on that. My thoughts there are, as we put into place all of these things that we want to do, we give it another shot this summer and then see next summer what we might do with the permits as far as rates. I know if you look down on the permits for a variety of different license holders, that's a big discussion, and those rates are different. But the specific rates on the dailies, I did not change, but that was not suggested at the time. And also, along the same lines, the suggestions of the parking committee on the number of passes for property owners. Now, this is just property owners that live in their house, use their house. And the suggestion had been from the parking committee to have property owners get 2 transferable, up to 2 non-transferable, and up to 2 mopeds for free as a property owner. I've suggested, in addition to that, have that would be A, and then B would be 2 transferable, and then up to 3 non-transferable, again, at no charge. They suggested the 2 mopeds to promote mopeds, and also to promote the idea that if somebody had owned property and had mopeds, that they should get up to 2 passes. And then if you don't, the reason I created B was if you don't have a moped or you don't want a permit, you can get those 3 non-transferable. I don't know of that many people that have end up getting 3 non-transferable and 2 extras, but some people do. Personally, I have 4 cars and I get 4 non-transferable. So, 2 I think is plenty, but I have a driveway. So that's the suggestion there. And then with the idea that if a property owner wanted any additional passes, they could get up to 3 transferable, 2 transferable at $150, and additional 2 at $200 each. I don't know how many people would actually want that many extra passes, but just so that they could. And they would be given a discount because they were property owners.
And anything in addition to that, you're just not eligible to buy them?
You can buy them at the regular retail price.
Okay.
Which is $250 at the moment.
Oh, I see. All of this at retail. Thank you.
Well, I've been looking at it as, let's review the property owner, 2 transferable plus 2 plus 2. I'm amenable to that. I said that before. I still am. But let's look and see how that differs from what it is today. 2 transferable, that's what they get today for free. 2 non-transferable, well, that's a limitation because now they get an unlimited number of non-transferable as long as the vehicle is in their property name, right? So there is a limitation there of 2. And then the 2 mopeds, I said before, I'm fine with it, provided that they own it. I'm not amenable to just giving them to give out to whoever.
You have to register just like the non-transferables.
So, I look at that as how many parking spaces are they getting? Just the property owner, not a rental, property owner. They're getting 2 transferable plus 2 non-transferable for free, and then 2 mopeds. If you look at how I'm approaching it is how many parking spaces do they get? They get 2 in their driveway because they're mandated to have 2 spaces in their driveway. They get 2 for the transferable parking, so that's 4 that they get under this program. And then they get up to 2 non-transferable. Of course, now they get, again, it's unlimited. But that's at least 4 spaces plus up to 2 more non-transferable. That's up to 6 spaces they get now. So now I look at it as if you rent, and June, make sure I'm doing this math right. If you're a landlord, you get the above, 2 plus 2 plus 2, plus you get 2 transferable for free. And currently you get a maximum of 2 transferable at $30 each. Now I call it $30 each as a giveaway. Huh? For if you're a landlord. If you're a landlord? I'll look it up later. Okay, so regardless, if you're a property owner and you're a landlord, what does that net you? It nets you 2 spaces in your driveway, 4 transferable, 6, which totals 6, plus you get the non-transferable and you get those that you want at $30 or, which is essentially freebies, you know? So I guess by my math, I'm saying that after that, you have, whether you're a property owner or a property owner with a landlord, you got to pay full price. I think we're giving them a reasonable number of free parking spaces, including the 2 on their property, as well as all the others by permit. Let me look up.
And that's what you're saying for the property owners.
Property owner who is renting during the season of the entire premises of a residential property and has a city license to so rent may receive 2 additional seasonal transferable permits and may purchase up to 2 more seasonal transferable permits at a charge of $30 each. So again, I think with our program, we're being very generous. And I think that after that point, that the easiest thing, going for ease, is just say everybody else has to pay full price. And look at part of it. Part of it is it needs to be a deterrent. Part of what we're trying to do is promote parking in your drive and bringing fewer cars into the town. So anyhow, that's.
I'm sorry, I stepped out of the room. We were addressing just the property owners. You went into the other permit?
I did the rentals too. Property owners that rent. And what I'm saying is, I think that we're being generous with our parking passes and the number of parking spaces that they will have with the passes and their 2 on-site driveway spots, and that I don't know that we need to be discounting all the future additional.
So basically,
parking
what you're
permits.
saying is, if I'm a property owner that rents this house and I get 2 transferable, I get 2 non-transferable, but since I'm renting the house, it's pretty worthless to any renter. So I get 2 transferables, and you're basically saying, after that, they pay $250. Versus today, they pay $30.
Well, that's for the rental part of it.
That's what I'm saying.
Remember, if let's start over again. If you're a property owner,
They get
you
2.
get 2 transferable, and then under your program, they get 2 non-transferable and up to 2 mopeds.
Yes, but again.
And then if you're a landlord, you additionally get 2 transferable for free.
No, not in mine. No, if you look at it, let me step back. As a property owner, you get 2 transferable.
I'm looking at today's code.
Oh, no, yes, today's. I'm saying these are changes here. I thought you were going into the changes.
Mayor, you're on line 37, is that what you're referencing? Yes?
Yes. Did you, on line 37? If you
Well,
look,
I'm in the full length one, so what are you,
Yeah, that's the full-length one.
yeah.
let me look at your abbreviated one here.
No, no, it's not on the abbreviated, it's on the regular one, on 30, line 37. Again, let's go back
Line
to,
37 has the word price. That's it. Version 3, the long version. Line 37.
That's 39, that's line 39, the one that was in the package,
Yeah.
the word price. So
yeah,
a couple lines.
somehow
below that.
it's.
I'm using what I printed out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit different. Let me go over this one more time. The property owner, just the straight property owner, at this point in time gets two transferable and an unlimited number of non-transferables. The suggestion is 2 transferable, up to 2 non-transferable, and up to 2 mopeds. That's a regular property owner. Okay, now if we go down to a regular property owner that is a landlord, they get those things. Well, those 2 transferable, you can transfer to your tenant. However, the non-transferable, the mopeds, you can't. Okay? So technically, the property owner that rents the entire premise with a valid city license gets those 2 transferable, which most people that rent, they keep them themselves, by the way, but they can pass it on. And then, in addition, up to 2 permits at $150, whereas now they get 2 for free, and then they can start buying them at $30. So basically, what I'm saying is, someone with a valid license gets nothing for free, other than what he gets for owning the property. And then an additional 2 at $150, an additional 2 at $200, and if he wants to go behind that, it's at the retail price of $250. Versus today, the landlord has the opportunity to buy almost unlimited at $30.
No, two free, maximum of 2 transferable at $30.
Okay, so they get 4 for $60. Whereas I'm saying they get 2 for $150 each, 2 for $200 each, and then if they want more, it's $250 each. The residents, if they want additional ones, additional up to 2 at $150, additional 2 at $200, same thing. So the residents get basically what the same property owner / landlord gets. But his tenants, so you're going to end up having 6 or 10 permits, whereas he's going to have 6.
But there's no difference in what you're proposing in the cost for a regular property owner or a property owner that's also a landlord. I mean, everything is the same.
Yeah, those 2 transferable and up to 2 non-transferable, yeah, the same.
Yeah. And the additional ones are the same,
Yeah, would be,
whether you're a landlord or not.
yes.
Yeah.
And so what this does is, right now, property owners that are landlords, if they pass along their 2 permits, they're basically passing along to the tenants 6 permits, and it really costs them $60.
Well, I completely agree that there has to be a change for a property owner that has a rental license. My curiosity, and maybe I should remember this from all different meetings, but I don't. On line 38, where we have the up to 2 additional permits, one set for $150 and the other for $200. What is the premise that discount is even there, as opposed to it reading property owners that rent the entire premise with a valid city license, in addition to the above, which makes them equitable with a property owner who does not rent? Why doesn't it just say all others at retail price?
Well, why even have it? Eliminate it. The same things.
Yes,
Same thing.
my curiosity, I'm really trying to understand what is the fundamental that says that since since I do not have a rental license and someone else does, they get a discount as opposed to paying retail price.
So if I
You
look
get
at,
that same discount,
No,
by
it's
the
the
way.
same here.
The property owner, if they want more passes, gets that discount. Then the landlord, if they want more passes to pass along to their renters, get those discount for four passes.
And that's the question, why?
Why?
Why is that discount there
for either or for the landlord?
for the landlord?
Well,
That's what I'm trying to understand.
I
What
would
is
say
it?
it's probably as an interim rise, because right now, they get those four passes for $60. What you're proposing is they could get those four passes for $1,000.
Well, I think what I'm trying to ask is not the numbers yet. What is the premise that there's any discount at all?
Because they're a property owner.
Well, as a property owner, we're equitable in what we get in the above.
Well, what Tony's saying is, why
it
do you?
along.
Lisa,
let
help me.
Can I try?
Yes.
I think what you're saying
Help me.
is, why do we even need to distinguish property owners versus property owners that rent? Because if you're a property owner,
Yes.
you are already getting the things
Yes.
that are outlined in lines 37 through 39 just by being a property owner. So why do we even need extra language or extra clarification
Yes.
as to whether, because you're already getting that because you're a property owner.
So-
It would be the
You're already-
same,
right,
but it's
so why even
basically.
distinguish that?
If you look at numbers, though, what I'm trying to do is kind of put an interim jump. Right now, that property owner that rents gets four passes for $60. In the
we know.
ultimate case, they would get four passes for $1,000. What this does is you get four passes for $700. Now, that's $640 more than the city got in revenue before, but it's being a little beneficial to a property owner that rents.
But we're saying in this proposal, it's the same for a property owner that doesn't rent and as
If you want more passes, yes.
a renter. There's no differentiation here.
No. It's basically the same thing, and I took that into consideration because the parking
So
committee
why
had mentioned.
spell it out if it's the same? That's all.
No, I know that's not. What I'm saying is. Your recommendation, I realize that. But when you first saw my first version, it was, geez, they're getting something better than the property owners. And so that's why I wanted to equalize it. But again, you know, if the committee, this is something that we do need to vote on. If the commissioners feel that that works, I think you need to speak with some rental agents and landlords in town. And, you know, just as you need to speak to some residents in town. But I think that jump is pretty substantial. And, you know, maybe that jump's the right jump to make at some point in time. But a jump from $60 to $1,000 is pretty substantial.
Is it appropriate to ask the committee chair to remind us what the committee proposal was that you're referencing?
Yeah, sure. And I think it was nothing.
That might be
That
helpful.
was basically what you're saying, Tony.
Okay.
Thanks. Linda Kaufman, resident, 206 Laurel, and also committee chair. When it comes to permits, what we had recommended was that, a couple things, and I have to say that I think unfortunately, the movement that you're making is opposite of what the goal was that we were trying to accomplish. The goal that we were trying to accomplish was to make it easier for residents to be less impacted by the amount of permits that were out on the street because of the flood of people that come into the neighborhoods. And so it was pieced together with multiple things. One was the hours into the evening, which I understand that you're not doing at this point, which then cascades to the rest of the things. The idea behind the hours into the evening was so that you began to disperse people and that you didn't have this crush of people coming into the residential areas about 3 or 4 o'clock. I will say this, I've said it many, many times, as long as you make it free at night, and as long as you reduce the amount that those employees are parking, which I think was one of the recommendations, you will not get a shuttle system and you won't get people to take a jitney. It's completely opposite because there's no incentive. You know, my incentive is I'm going to go into the neighborhoods and I'm going to park for free. So it's not a simple answer of what we recommended. It was this cascading piece. So the idea was that you enforce into the evenings, and I understand the limitations with technology at this point. So, you know, I appreciate that. But once you establish that, then we said, okay, what's the give back that the residents would have? Well, we're limiting the amount of permits that we were recommending that even residents get. That was a compromise to say residents are going to get less. But the gain that was that you would have enforcement into the evening so you wouldn't have the crush. And the recommendation was that if you were a rental place, that you wouldn't get them at a discounted price at all. That if you were conducting a business in the residential areas, which is what is happening in our residential areas, whether, you know, that's certainly my personal opinion, that's not a committee opinion, but if you're doing that, then you can, like everything else, buy the permit at the full rate. So we weren't ever proposing a discounted rate for for rental properties. So I just want to be clear about that. So the concept behind it was a sort of whole package. Increase it later into enforcement. Don't give as many permits out. You know, understand it goes back to that finite amount of spaces that we talked about. You've only got a finite amount of spaces. The more you flood the neighborhoods, all you're doing, although it sounds as though you're trying to do great short-term or work for the employees, because I think one of the suggestions is a reduced permit for even an employee, what you're really doing is hurting everybody because you're just flooding the market with permits that really are no good because there's no place to park anymore. You're not making it more difficult. So the only thing I would recommend when you look at permits is that, you know, we cautioned in the beginning that you don't pick some of the pieces, not all the pieces, because it doesn't quite fit. And unfortunately, at least based on what I'm seeing, that's what's happening with the permits by some of these changes. So, you know, just to answer your question, Dick, and I understand I kind of went a little long-winded, we weren't recommending any discount whatsoever. We were saying across the board, everybody has to compromise. So if we get later enforcement, that's a compromise, and employees now have to come up with additional revenues if they want to park there. It stops the flood in the neighborhoods, but the residents, the compromise is that they're limited with how many permits also, and if they wanted to buy permits, they were buying them at full price also. So we were just looking that everybody was equal across the board.
So Linda, I just want to make sure I understand. Your committee recommended no discounted rate on additional or rental permits, but and also no discounted rate on beyond the 2 + 2 + 2.
Correct.
Okay.
And understanding that was the compromise from the residential standpoint by saying, hey, not only are we taking away all of the free permits that you were given, which remember, if you had 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 names on that deed, you got 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 permanent permits. It was a compromise. It was, we're recommending we reduce it because we're trying to reduce the amount of traffic in the neighborhoods in return for some of those other pieces. And so, you know, I just say again, kind of make sure that you're looking at it holistically.
Well, and if you look at the proposal here, if we remove the discounted rate for rental permits, then it makes no sense to leave in the one on property owners because they just would buy extra
Yep.
discounted and give it to the rental.
Yeah, that's the
So
reason why I
it's-
put
it's
those
a-
the same.
It's got to be a package. You either do it for both or you don't do them for both.
And the last piece of this is, you know, it's all about incentives. And so the theory we had was if people now had to buy theirs, even a resident, at $250, perhaps they wouldn't really buy them and would use their driveways. You can't guarantee that that's going to happen, and it still makes it difficult. But the cheaper you make those permits, the less inclination people have to use their driveways or take a shuttle or do any of those things.
So given that, maybe we should consider not giving out any transferable to any property owners.
No, we didn't make that
I
suggestion.
know you didn't, but given that same scenario, maybe that's what we're supposed to do. And so as you as a property owner, me as a property owner, yes, I can have non-transferable on all my cars. And if I have friends, they park in the driveway.
Okay, I mean, I'll speak as a resident. I think that's going completely against trying to help residents in an already impacted residential neighborhood. That's not a committee. I can't speak for the committee, but boy, I would think that that's not.
But again, we're
that-
trying to get people off the street. We're trying to get permits off the street. Wouldn't
Well-
that be the
Well,
same thing?
No, I mean, let's be realistic. The reality of it is, and I'm speaking as a resident. The reality of it is, on our house, our street, I'm going to use our example, we have 11 rental properties, okay? They're all 5 bedrooms or more. Some are 6, some are 7, okay? That, if you take that into the amount of cars that come into the neighborhood, that's 5 or 6 cars per property. That's 70-plus cars, not mentioning the 7 or 8 of us that are residents. The reason, and I will continue to say this, that and it's a whole story, but the reason I park on the street and leave my driveway open is so that I can have someone come to dinner or stop by, or a work person. So
Exactly. So why do you need the transferable passes?
for the same reason as anybody else that may need it, is that
Exactly. The rentals, same thing.
I'm not saying take it away from the rentals. We didn't recommend taking it away
no.
from anybody. We're simply saying make everybody equal. So it almost sounds like you're penalizing now the residents. And what we're saying is those two transferables are something we use. So if I have 3 couples over for dinner, I need to find so 2 will go in my driveway and 1 goes with my transferable. It's just, if I've got workmen coming or whatever. So we're not saying eliminate everything that the resident gets or penalize the resident. We were simply trying to say, how do you manage this finite amount of spaces?
Okay. Any other comments?
Did that answer?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. So going back to first the property owners and then the property owners that rent, I guess under consideration would be to remove additional passes at any kind of discount for either of those classes. Any thoughts?
I'm okay with discounts for both of those classes personally. And keeping it kind of the way you proposed it here at this point. For both property owners and property owners that rent, it would be the same process, the same discounts.
Okay.
Well, I
That's
said
what I
earlier,
like.
I'm kind of fine, I'm somewhat fine with going full price after this. However, if you do this discount, I would again say keep it easy and pick one discounted price and that's it.
So basically what you're saying is with the property owners that rent, they get what a regular property owner gets and that's it. Everything else is at the retail price? And the same with a regular property owner, you get what you get, and then if you wanted to get more, you do not get a discount.
That's one option.
No, I'm not asking. I'm asking for your,
Just to clarify, when we use the words retail price,
$250.
That's $250. Okay, why don't we say $250?
yeah,
I mean,
that's
is
fine
this-
too. It's just basically what the standard price is, because I think eventually it'll be whatever the price is. Right now, it just so happens to be $250.
Right, thank
Well,
you.
the seasonal transferables are $250.
Yeah.
The seasonal non-transferables are $225, and then they're discounted after August 1st, okay? But
Right.
generally, we would be talking about a full season pass, I would
Yes.
think.
Wait, now I'm confused again. I'm sorry. I just wish I had a chart that shows what it is and what we're proposing. But anyway, what do property owners who rent pay for additional passes now?
$30.
$30.
You get
said
two,
it's
unlimited.
two for free.
Gotcha.
And then 2 for $30.
Transferable.
Yep.
And you get unlimited for $30?
No, it's just 2.
2 for 30.
So you get 4 for $60 right now.
And a property owner that wants to do the same thing currently gets them for $30.
Nope. They have to have a rental license.
So the property owner cannot buy additional
That's true, at this point in time.
at this point.
Yep, so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to take a lot of the things that were done in, you know, and bring it together all together, so that it's fair on all sides.
Right.
But see, technically, I think, as a property owner, because you have unlimited non-transferable passes, I don't know that it's ever even come up that a property owner wants to buy more passes.
I can walk in and get a non-transferable.
No, I know, at full price.
At full price.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm
I
saying.
could buy 10 of them if I wanted to, full
Yeah.
price. I can get a rental license for $30, I buy them for 30.
Right, which I think if I'm with everybody else, that has got to change.
No, and we actually discussed that a year ago.
Yes,
And at
okay.
that point in time, we said, oh, it's definitely going up to 100 at that time.
Well, I guess I'm leaning toward just removing the language about rent, landlords, and just incorporating it all within, I have lines 34 to 37 here. Property owners get 2 transferable, 2 non-transferable, 2 mopeds if they own a moped, and then additional transferable passes up to 2 at $200 each.
So wouldn't that mean, I'm getting confused too, and I apologize. Wouldn't that mean that a property owner with a rental license or without is under the same standard?
They should be, but I don't think so in what he's saying. You're saying a property owner, not landlord, can get 2 extra at 200, whereas the property owner landlord cannot get any extra except at the retail price. Or discount, whatever.
So I'm trying to align this with what the committee thoughts and work has been, and I'm even losing track, and I apologize.
And basically what the committee is saying is, right now, if you're a property owner, you get 2 non-transferable, up to 2 2 transferable, up to 2 non-transferable, and up to 2 mopeds. Everything else, full price. If you're a property owner that rent the entire premise, you get that same thing. 2 transferable, up to 2 non-transferable, and 2 mopeds, because you're a property owner, not extra. And then for your tenants or for yourself, if you want additional passes, it's at $250.
Everybody's equal.
Was the recommendation?
Was the recommendation, yes.
There's no difference whatsoever. A landlord can't now buy 10 of them, let's do 2. Yes, to answer your question, the recommendation was that everybody was equal. You couldn't have a landlord go buy 2 extras for $30 anymore. That if they wanted the 2 extras, they would buy them at $250, and that they could actually buy 3 or 4 or 5 at $250. There's no limit to how many you can buy at regular price. No discounts.
And I think that's where I was when I first asked the question.
Isn't parking fun?
I think so.
But
The concept was equal across the board.
Yeah.
That it didn't matter if you rented or if you lived there, everybody got treated the same.
Yeah, and your example on your street, I think, is very telling, to do it in the way that you're recommending for me. And the other comment that Linda has made, and that the committee made over and over and over again, is that we can't just pick and choose little things here and expect that we're going to make big differences, that it's a holistic look at parking in the city.
But then that doesn't that put us right back to the times in the permit areas? That if we leave them as the status quo, then we have a disjointed approach.
Well, remember, I'm hopeful that we'll analyze the satellite parking for the employees and make that successful. And then we make it successful, come back and look at that and consider their recommendation to go from permits ending at 5 to 9. But for me, it's a two-step process.
So this season would be the analytical piece.
And Tony, if I may say, I think we support that as long as it gets looked at, and some of that is the enforcement possibility. You know, the LPR is really needed, and if you can't implement that for next season, then you have to find compromise, and the compromise would be come back and revisit it the next go-around.
I like what Stan just said too, and what you were saying, but it's important then that we do it, that we build that into the in
that's on
the
the
system. We
times.
need to pay attention to the employees, and I don't think we have to overanalyze what the situation is. It's just, I think looking at what are the opportunities for our employees, many of whom are fairly minimum wage folks, and we need them here to do the work that they're doing, and we need to be supportive of them finding efficient and affordable parking.
And actually, it exists as we speak,
Well,
and nobody uses
and you're
it.
talking about the DART, and many of them will say that the concept is good, but it's not predictable, it doesn't run as timely as it should, particularly for those that are getting off work at 10, 11, 12, 1 or 2 a.m., and it needs to be greatly improved.
No question, it needs to be greatly improved, and unfortunately, the city would have to subsidize something like that so that we would have control over it. And, you know, first of all, I think we could use the same parking lot, but we'd have to have the equipment, which is pretty expensive. Well,
Mayor, I just have one comment on the change in rental. So most of our property owners that rent, I think most property owners that rent would have already now established their pricing for the upcoming season, and we would be making maybe a pretty significant change, you know, with this parking pass situation kind of late in the game. I haven't heard any feedback on that from folks that rent, but I do think that that's something to take into consideration as we're moving forward here, that you're putting those property owners that rent maybe in a bit of a more difficult financial situation at this point. So I just want to make that comment. I don't know where I stand on this quite yet. I'm more with Stan, though, where I think we need to make this simple, right? So, and it's you know, all property owners get what you already have here proposed, and then all property owners get additional passes at some price. And I'd lean more for this first year of like $100 or something with no limit. I don't know, as opposed to jumping to all these 3 tiers and, you know, a significant increase. But make it simple, consistent, you know, whether you rent or not, and make it something, I don't know, $100 as opposed to $250 or $200. That's just where I am if I had to make a decision or vote on this. I know we're not voting now.
all right, so what this leads me to believe that we need to have another meeting, and I would say probably the January workshop, that we'll discuss 4 things, I think 3 or 4 things, I'll enumerate them, for a vote in our January meeting. Number 1 would be that property owners get 2 transferable, up to 2 non-transferable, up to 2 mopeds. Nobody mentioned my second choice. You want to just throw that off? Because
Wait a
some
minute.
people might want an additional non-transferable versus a moped, somebody that doesn't have one. So And so that the vote would be, okay, either A or B. Taking out completely any additional passes, everything else is additional, is 250. The second vote would be property owners that rent. Any additional permits, 250. Again, that would be the discussion in next meeting, and a vote in January.
So Mayor,
That's
just to
absolutely not what
clarify,
we discussed there on the 250. I didn't
No,
hear
no,
anybody
bec-
say that.
Because, well.
To
the
be honest,
consensus
I'm not
is-
sure where that came from.
I think the consensus is leaning towards no discount for anybody. I'm saying, hey, you can vote against it,
Yeah,
yeah, being full price.
I didn't hear that as the consensus. I just want to clarify that. Is that what the consensus of this group
I mean,
was?
I
No
didn't-
discount
look,
for any addition?
This is what I put down. So, but what I'm hearing is people are leaning towards
and your proposal is equal treatment, landlord or not.
treatment for everybody. And again, you don't have to vote for it, but I'm just saying, I don't want to, the reason I put this stuff out, and the reason I put it out for everybody a week ahead of time is for people to say, you know what, 200's wrong, it should be 250, or whatever. And I'll discuss that at the meeting. So, we've gone back and forth, and we've had input from the parking committee as well as the public and each of the commissioners. And it really comes down to, are we going to allow, and it's really the renters. It's the tenants. Are we going to allow the tenants to be able, or the landlords, excuse me, to be able to get discounted passes? And that's really what it comes up to. And so it's, you know, in my mind, I put these suggestions on here as a, you know, interim step, because I think going, as I said, using numbers, going from $60 to $700 to maybe $1,000 next year is better than $60 to $1,000. Because I have heard from landlords that think that we're outrageous by even changing the $30, but that's not. So it really comes down to, how do we want to move forward on this? Because we have to give our staff the opportunity to figure these things out, and the city manager from a budget perspective. So what I was looking for is trying to get a consensus to move forward. And it sounds like this is a pretty contentious issue, so that we probably will need a vote at some point in time. I would prefer not to vote in March or April, because we have to start getting these things out with licenses and whatever.
Right.
How many
I'm
parking,
hearing now,
how many parking spaces do we want to promote or condone at a rental property? Is 6 cars what we want?
No.
We want 8 cars? We want 4 cars? I mean, that may be one way I approach it, because if we want 6 cars at a rental property, that means 2 in the driveway and 4 parking passes. Or would we rather promote 4 cars total, 2 off-street and 2 parking passes? You know, again, I think it has to partly serve as a deterrent for getting more and more out. I mean,
And I think that's really what the parking committee is suggesting, because right there, what you just said, the 4, is what they're suggesting. You get 2 parking passes already for free for the landlord, and 2 spaces in the driveway. And so your numbers are kind of correct. Do we want to promote 4?
well, if you
Do
want to
we wanna
promote that, then this property owner's, your A satisfies that. 2 transferable, 2 non-transferable, and 2 moped. That satisfies that, because most likely the owner's going to keep their permanent sticker on their vehicle.
no.
And they're going to hand over to the rental persons, their tenants, the 2 transferable, and then they get 2 in the driveway. There's 4 car spaces.
And so, again, so it goes back to no discount. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
That's
So-
where I'm headed.
Because, I mean, what I
today.
hear, and it's what drives the decision-making. What are we trying to get to? And you know, whether we call it a deterrent or an incentive, you know, we can talk about it either way, but end up at the same place. You know, I mean, for me, how do we incentivize getting fewer cars off the street, or fewer, and or fewer cars in town, or it's a deterrent, you know, but we end up at the same place. So I'm in agreement that we have to think about what drives this. What is the result that we're trying to get to?
So maybe what we need to do is, rather than no discount or discount today, the commissioners give it some thought and please present at the, for discussion at the January meeting, thoughts on the property owners, the suggestion. Again, that's line 33 to 36. The property owners that rent, which is 37 through 39. And I'll send this out to you all again. And then while we're at it, give some thought to the downtown employees. Downtown employees, I put down here because I heard from a variety of businesses that downtown employees need something. And they don't, as Dick said, they don't make much money. And so I have $100. So again, have a number there if you could. Should downtown employees get any kind of a discount or not? And it's really those three that we have to hone in on. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere by continuing to talk about it now.
Mayor, could we possibly, I'm sensing that the parking folks, and I'll ask Sharon, I'll defer to Sharon on this, may need an answer on that sooner rather than maybe even than January. Is it possible to put it on the December 20, whatever that date is, 21st agenda? I'll defer to Sharon if she's okay waiting till January, that's fine. I just wanted to kind of bring that up because it seems like.
For a vote.
Yes, for this discussion as opposed to waiting for January.
It really comes down to the commissioners. Would you guys be able to discuss it a little bit further the 21st and vote, feel comfortable about voting?
I would. I think this has been a good discussion. I'm ready to go.
I'm not sure I would be
I
able
just need a
to
little time to digest all
get
this.
any more information.
Yeah.
You know, I'll try to get more
Going another
information
month or
out.
two that would make me
But
decide differently.
again, it's really, I mean, I think we've got a consensus on the other things about the season and the times, and I don't necessarily think we need a vote on that because I don't think it's a contentious situation. But these passes for property owners that rent, I think we should. And that affects the hotel rooming house. So it's really the permits. If you make sure that we can discuss the permits down and whoever gets a permit as we move forward. Does that work? And we'll have further discussion on the 21st?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's 12/21. And please, if you have any thoughts, contact me or, make sure you bring them to that meeting.
Yeah, and you know this will be subject to, city manager just remind me, this will be subject to an ordinance, because most of this stuff is
Yes.
codified, so we'll have to.
Oh, no, yeah, all that ordinance stuff, no question, but I don't know that we need the ordinance in place to move forward. We need the ordinance before we finish it.
Right, I mean, I think you could probably, vote to authorize me
Yeah.
to draft an ordinance
Yes.
with these parameters, and then
Yes,
then
that's
vote at your next meeting to adopt the ordinance.
that's what
Not
my thought.
optimal, but I think, hopefully with the media, we'll get the word out that we're contemplating these topics.
Right.
And in interest of time, okay, so I'll draft something up so that I get something out to you guys for that. The other portion of it was, and again, so we're going to look at everything with permits with the exception of times and season. And please look at the permits for all the stakeholders that get permits. So for example, as you start to go down this list, hotel, motel, rooming house property owners right now get the same deal that the renters get. And they get actually an inordinate amount of passes at $30. That's now. We're not going to go backwards. We want to go forward. Same thing with owner operated or business, if they want more passes, so on and so forth. So if you could be prepared to discuss all of these stakeholders that get permits. And then we go into the new ideas kind of section, I put something here about angle-in parking on King Charles, south of Edmonds, as well as there are a few other streets on the north side of town. My feeling on those are that it's something that we could work with the city staff on, because I think it'll create more parking spaces closer to the beach, as well as on King Charles, at least, it would be a traffic calming device, because right now, people come from First Street past St. Edmunds, they go slow, and then all of a sudden, once they pass that, that hill, and they start flying down the street to Silver Lake. I think not only would it create some extra spaces, but it would also create a calming effect on traffic. So it's something to think about, but that's, I think, something to work with the city manager and the staff to figure out exactly how many spaces might be put in there and still be safe. We've talked about working with the staff and looking at some of the smaller spaces around town that can't be utilized for cars. Maybe we make those mopeds, maybe some extra moped places. But again, I think these are all things that unless people have an aversion to having the staff look into it, I think it would be a creation of more moped/vehicle spaces in spaces that aren't being used, like a lot of driveways that are no longer driveways, those type of things.
So Mayor, is that something the city manager can just move forward with now, looking at that?
I would think so, and her staff, and to start the process.
Sure,
you
okay.
know. I mean, I don't know if all of this can be done by May 1st, but it's just something in the future for
Okay.
discussion.
I'm fine with that. I think, I see places throughout the town where we can squeeze in some moped. I would caution us on where we put them, though. You put them, you squeeze it down and you put it next to a curb cut. That doesn't facilitate parking in your curb cut, and it makes it harder to get in and out, et cetera. As far as angle-in parking on King Charles, you know my opinion that I prefer heat islands, and heat islands that actually would be more pedestrian friendly, because you cross from the one side of the street to the median and then over there to the other side. And angle parking, ask Kathy Osterholm, Chair of the Street and Transportation Committee, about trying to cross King Charles in summertime with angle parking, where you've got to stick your neck out 10, 15 feet to be able to see around the car. So I don't agree that it's safer for pedestrians going that way. But anyhow, you know my opinion on that.
So let me, for the record, also say, because it's not mentioned anywhere in this, and I know this wasn't part of the strategy for the committee, but you mentioned Kathy's committee, and they've also taken a close look at bicycles. And bicycles have to be brought into the purview of all of this decision-making. We need safe bike routes, we need bicycle parking. And so as we do these things with cars and mopeds, we need to be thinking about how do we become more bicycle friendly, more bicycle safe for folks, because bikes aren't going to go away. In fact, I think we want to encourage more bicycle riding. And so we don't want to do things with parking that will deter more safety for bikes, more usage of bikes.
Right. As a space filler until the mayor gets back, we've got a email communication today. We just received it today, haven't had time to read it. It has to do with somebody saying something unique that they saw on 60 Minutes about parking in the Netherlands. If this is what I saw on TV, it's a beachfront town that has a fairly wide area from the front of the storefronts or the street paralleling the beach to the ocean. And they put an underground parking lot underneath the sand dune. Now imagine our sand dunes there. Their sand dune is the width of a football field. So obviously it can accommodate that type of thing. But so anyhow, that used a few minutes. The mayor's still out. Is there anything else on this list that y'all want to go over? I don't. Sorry. Mayor, we just talked about this email communication real quick to cover up time, and now we hand it back to you.
And what did you say on the email? Just,
That 60 Minutes had a program, and if this is the one that I saw, it has to do with an innovative parking solution in a beachfront town in the Netherlands where they created, say, a 200-foot wide dune and put a parking garage inside underneath that dune. Obviously, we don't have that space
inside,
inside the dune, yeah.
well, hopefully, I mean, this discussion obviously gets a lot of conversation and will for years. Hopefully, there will be some innovative things that we can think of, not only technology as we move forward with parking, but other things that may be, whether they're shuttles and other parking spaces inside of town, outside of town. So I think those discussions will continue to happen. Just informationally, there will be a presentation on Monday from the Jolly Trolley people to talk about a circular shuttle within town. And I think that's, a step in the right direction. And I hearken back to what I mentioned before about parking, or about what the tourism they had said is, more parking. So that's where a lot of this is coming from. And I'm hoping that we can create not only movement of people, but more parking in some fashion. Better moving traffic, and that's kind of what we're trying to do with the wayfinding and stuff, but also more public transportation options. And the Jolly Trolley may be something, maybe working something further with the state could be a possibility too. With that, I think we're all finished. Mr. Brittingham, you've got 6 seconds. Just kidding.
I respect the people that were not on the agenda. A few comments. Where are parking permits available? Silver Lake Bridge, Rehoboth Avenue, as you come in town at the telephone company building, and the parking division office, is that right?
At this point in time, but that'll change.
Okay. I would offer a suggestion for the future for clarity to make it easy, especially if it's a single author, or for your lineage on your items, have 2 that were substantially correct, that maybe not have duplication of numbers, maybe have one of them start in the hundreds or something, so we know which form you're speaking about. There was a certain amount of jumping around. It's been going on for years. I made comment about it. You still come across Silver Lake Bridge over linked vehicles called the police department. Those signs ought to be upgraded with the number for the police department, that they should not dial 911 to get there. Can the city staff, can city employees and you folks that have city staff stickers on your cars park any place for free? I don't.
We don't.
That's not true.
Well,
I've
we
seen
do
people- I've
have
seen people get
stickers.
tickets.
We do have stickers that are provided by the city manager for city business, so we can park in the east lot. They are not stickers that we can park anywhere for free.
Okay, thank you. Because when, to anybody else that's in the room, the 5 or 6 people that are not city-related, and anybody else, it doesn't really matter. But, so it's actually restricted for parking here in this lot. Is that generally the case?
As far as I know.
Well, respectfully, I think you should know what the policy is. Completely different subject. As I travel on the north side of town, and I find a lot of people, and I stop and say, may I help you, or whatever, do you have a parking permit? And how do you tell somebody where to go get a parking permit? Not that it guarantees that they'll find a place if they get one. And the very last item on your handout, which is nicely done this morning, the education signage, et cetera, there needs to be signs on the north side of town where you can get.
If you read that line as it's supposed to be read, education signage is the plan for the future.
Okay, well, we've been at
So
the
you
future.
won't have that question
We've
later.
been at the future for a couple years, and we still haven't seen the signage.
When was the first time you saw that piece of paper?
I have passed
When was the first
statement before
time you saw
this
that
morning,
piece of paper?
Or actually, the other day when it came. No.
Thank you.
But the point,
And that's the first
we
time it
still
went out.
haven't achieved it. I'm not going to point out other signs that are not in town. But, and since budget hearings, I thought actually in some sense were already started, notwithstanding heavy duty, there still needs to be out front, we didn't get it with Streetscape, you have a change machine out front, and somewheres in that, you can't find a safe place to park at the median without pulling up by the mailbox or pulling in, and a lot of people park literally in the street to get out to get change, because there's no parking at it and there's no sidewalk around on either side to get around it. So as we're looking for next spring, if we want to make it a pedestrian safe place, there needs to be some addressing of that median out front there where the change maker is, so that people can get change and park. It is no such thing as firehouse permit parking. It's a joke of a sign. And commercial trucks park in there to unload and stuff like that. So it ought to be ripped apart a little bit behind the change machine to have a place for people, if they want to stop for change, that they can be off the roadway, especially of a summer evening, especially a weekend. I think you've had a very heavy discussion today. I think the comments about adding the city manager staff look out to the business community. But I think you have to be extremely cognizant of the fact that a lot of the owners aren't around. So I would think, and a lot of people you see in the stores are not the owners. And I think that something ought to go to the principal handouts, literally, or mailed to the business owners, especially downtown. It's not going to change anything, but they are well aware. We notice how full the room today is of business people, that they ought to have an opportunity for comment to know what you're proposing before you come into the meeting of the 21st. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Mayor, can I make a comment? Oh, I'm sorry, just really quick after.
Go ahead.
My comments, just, I just wanted to note that, today is National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, and I just think it's important to remember those type of points in our history. So I just wanted to recognize that. So thank you for a minute to do so.
Yes, sir.
Hoyt Decker, I'm on Laurel Street, and at the risk of annoying Walter, I have a comment about his comments. Wasn't there a public comment? I came late, forgive me. Wasn't there a public comment opportunity at the beginning of this meeting, or did you defer it to the end? Huh?
Yes, there was.
Okay. Excuse me, I'm speaking. So I'm sympathetic with Walter. I think he's made several excellent points, but I'm also sympathetic to your situation, and I think he needs to have some kind of opportunity to express himself. And maybe it's a trickle-up system where maybe he would go to the city manager first and be able to, prioritize some of these issues. I think some of his points are forgive me, minor, but some of them are also important. So you might want to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hoyt.
Anybody else? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin, can I ask you a quick question?
Doing any better?